The body will quickly convert 100 calories of fat consumed into 97 calories of body fat, using only 3 calories of energy to do so. So, is fat what is making you fat? Hi, and welcome to Nature's Path to Wellness. My name is Wendy. I'm a natural nutrition clinical practitioner who specializes in helping people reverse type 2 diabetes. In a recent study regarding fat, they found that after only 3 days on a high saturated fat diet, a common ingredient in beef and cheese, the brains of mice and rats actually became resistant to leptin and insulin. So if you're not familiar with the hormone leptin, leptin is the hormone that tells your body that it's full. So if you're consuming food and you're getting full, the leptin is the hormone that actually kicks in and says, okay, we're done here, so it's time not to eat anymore. And of course, insulin is the hormone that is pushed from the pancreas in order to help get the blood glucose into the cells that is used for energy. So the promotion of fat accumulation happens when we consume processed foods, refined carbs, and fat. And the surge of insulin that occurs when we consume these types of foods, these highly processed foods, refined carbs, and that insulin that happens actually promotes the storage of fat in the body. And the more storage of fat that happens, it affects the way that insulin works and the way that glucose is taken up into the cells, because glucose is now not taken into the cells properly because it's being interfered with the fat. So we end up with more glucose in the bloodstream, and over a long period of time, we end up with insulin resistance, maybe type 2 diabetes, and of course, obesity if we go on for a long period of time. So really, this creates a vicious cycle. Foods that are cooked in oil actually soak up a lot of the oil, more than you even realize. And so people are consuming things like French fries and all of those kinds of things, potato chips, and all of those fats and oils in these highly processed foods and the saturated fats that you find even in meats and cheeses, they actually end up blocking the job of what insulin is designed to do. With all of these diets that are being promoted to people by doctors and experts, people that are doctors in fields that have nothing to do with nutrition, I find interesting, and they're promoting things like the carnivore diet and the keto diet rather than promoting a well-balanced, healthy diet. And it must get awfully frustrating for the general public, because to be honest, even as somebody who practices nutrition, I read tons of books about nutrition and what's, sort of the latest studies that are going on. And I find it even overwhelming for myself sometimes. And I have to remind myself to stay the course, to stay true to what the science says and what my studies told me. And in fact, what actually helped me to reverse type 2 diabetes. And it definitely was nothing to do with going on a fad diet. Now, that's not to say that I didn't try the keto diet, at least initially, because face it, at the time when I was trying to reverse type 2 diabetes, lose some weight and get my blood glucose under control in a quick way, the keto diet seemed to be the right thing to do because it worked initially, but it's not something that you can do long term. At least it wasn't for me, and I, again, don't recommend that for most people. And so it's really tough. It's really tough to know what to do and where to go and what the best approach is in order to, get your blood glucose levels under control, reverse type 2 diabetes, and to lose some weight in the process. So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? I'm a huge advocate of balance when it comes to nutrition. So people that are telling you to cut out all the carbs and demonize all of the carbs, I don't agree with that. And people will tell you that, you're supposed to have no fat. And another guy's going to tell you that you're supposed to have a high fat diet. And then somebody else is going to say you shouldn't have any fructose. Fructose, of course, comes from fruit, but It also comes from highly processed foods like high fructose corn syrup. Saturated fat has a lot to do with where we are today and the amount of obesity and especially type 2 diabetes. Really, if we look at it, the true issue is that we are consuming a lot of processed foods and sugars. So for those who consume a healthy amount of, let's say, for example, olive oil in their diet, I have no issue with that. And so if people are consuming lots of salads, making a healthy salad dressing by using some olive oil and some apple cider vinegar and maybe some spices, of course, that kind of fat, if we're talking about olive oil, is absolutely healthy. The fat that we should be talking about is all these fats that are in the cheeses and the meats and the highly processed foods. And those are the ones that cause the problem with insulin and preventing insulin from doing its job, which then leads to, of course, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Insulin's job is to get the glucose that you're consuming in your diet into the cells to be used for energy. And essentially, when we're consuming too much fat, we end up with a situation where those cells, it's almost like the insulin is like a lock that's trying to get the glucose into the cells. And by consuming too many fats, saturated fats, the lock mechanism is not working the way it should. The glucose is not getting into the cells and it remains in the bloodstream, leading to, of course, high blood glucose levels. And then the body's trying to push out more insulin to try and correct the problem. And so you end up with a vicious cycle. So can one consume fats let's say in the form of olive oil? Absolutely. That being said, we must remove the highly processed foods, the refined carbohydrates, and the sugars from our diet. And that's where we really should be putting our focus. So the guy that's telling you, don't have any fats, they're not good for you. Let's take a look at the kind of fats that we're consuming and to determine if those are the things that we should be consuming. So olive oil to make salads? Sure. If we're consuming the highly processed foods and the refined carbohydrates and all of the things that are, have lots of fat in them, then those are the things that we want to get rid of from our diet. So when you're out there listening to all of the information that's being shared about having fat in your diet and the information that's telling us that fat is making us fat, it's definitely relating to the type of fat that we're consuming. If we're enjoying fat in terms of some healthy olive oil for a salad dressing, go for it. I encourage you to have as many healthy salads as you can because that's where we should be putting our focus. And of course, I'm recommending a cold pressed extra virgin olive oil as opposed to a canola oil. You don't want to be having any canola oil. They're highly processed. And that is definitely another video that I need to do about canola oil or oils that are known as vegetable oils. So you'll want to avoid the processed and saturated fats, of course, and keep in balance with your meal. Enjoy a nice healthy salad dressing. So to answer your question, are fats making us fat? It definitely depends on the kind of fat that we're consuming. So if this information has been helpful for you, then I ask you to give it a thumbs up and share it with somebody else who might be asking the same questions as you about fat. And if you haven't already subscribed, I ask that you subscribe to the channel and come back to hear about more healthy nutrition information. I look forward to seeing you again here next time at Nature's Path to Wellness, where your path to lifelong health begins. Take care and see you again soon.